Thank you, Amshi. Appreciate the kind words there. So guys, I don't like this podium thing, but I'll stand here and have a clicker. Fantastic. So going at 4:30, I love it, because if I see yawns and you guys nodding off, it's not my fault. My presentation's great. It's just a long day. You've been exhausted. It's to blame it on the conference, right? So I'll keep it at that. What I want to talk about really quickly, just my background, is I run customer success at Marketo. How many of you are familiar with Marketo? Fantastic, love it. It's in the marketing automation is the broad space. We call ourselves engagement economy. We're driving it. It's really come down to a two-horse race. It's basically come down to us and that other red-colored company out there, which I don't forget the name now. And I'm just kidding. And Oracle, right? But we're really kind of, we're just definitely kind of we got the wind behind us. And marketing is doing really well. I run customer success globally for Marketo, which basically means that once the customer becomes a customer, once we actually close a deal, that me and my team are responsible for that team. And what I want to talk about is for SaaS companies, and we'll talk about is 70 to 90% or more of your revenue comes from your customer. It is not, unlike in a more traditional business model. Now, not all of you may be SaaS, but SaaS is certainly kind of the discussion. I'm also hugely a big fan of, even though I've been in sales and marketing 20 years, big fan of a self-confessed geek in a sort. I used to work for Carl Sagan at one point in my life, and a physics, cosmology, sci-fi kind of guy, and AI interests me a lot. So that's why I thought this was a great time to, so I love the idea of being able to kind of share my thoughts. Isn't that cool? Okay. Thank you. We do have a creative team. Anyway, so let me kind of start by talking about what is AI. So there's a lot, this is how I think about it, and I'm hoping this might be helpful for you. If you look at some of today's computers, when you compare those to a newborn baby, a human, they're far superior. Purely from a computational standpoint, a newborn child has virtually no computational strength in a sense. But what ends up happening is humans, we are adaptive. We learn, we understand that actions have consequences, and that basically there's a cause and effect, and we rapidly scale, and by the time a human is at the age of, between 6 and 10 years, depending on the human, right, and depending on the computer also, right, we exceed the computer. Whereas, so what ends up happening is, what I consider AI is in a machine that can go from point A to point B in that chart on its own without actually having human intervention. It can learn, it can adapt, it can get more sophisticated. That is AI. What is not AI is a very sophisticated coded system. So I saw this machine, this counter on the road the other day. It's a little pneumatic tube running across the street. It counts how many vehicles go across. And I was thinking about the algorithm for that, because you got to have two axles. They go. What if two cars happen to go at the same time? All that kind of stuff. Humans had to have no problem going to the clicker, just go click, 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 how many cars went through. But with a machine, you got to kind of think of all possible situations. It's and figure out how to do it. What is happening is that is not AI. AI is if a machine can actually look at a vehicle, image recognition, and be able to crack that at a very high level. It's also a hype in terms of the AI has been used kind of overly broadly. And what I thought might be helpful is just to deconstruct what I think of as artificial intelligence. So on the two axes, I've got where we are from an advancement standpoint and what is the overall timeline. So if you look at that, we've got augmented reality. It's true. You got Oculus. You got a bunch of things happening in the gaming system. You've got AI, augmented reality. You get into virtual reality. From there, you've got machine learning, which the machine actually starts to adapt itself as time progresses. Now, there is something called ANI, artificial narrow intelligence, which is AI where a machine does learn, but it can learn one specific task. So for example, DeepMind won the game of Go, which I don't know how many of you are familiar with that. And Go is the most complex game there is on the planet. In fact, the number of permutations in the game of Go exceeds the number of atoms in the entire known universe. And when Lee was beaten by that, people are just like, New York Times goes and says, this is the end of humanity as we know it. But the fact is, the same computer cannot go, yes, I beat him, or shed a tear, or smile, or any of these things. It is very, very defined in what it can do. So that's ANI. When you start getting into deep learning, and then gets into what is personally my favorite, which is going to be really exciting, is BCI, which is brain-computer interface. That is going to really change a lot of things going forward. Then you get to AGI, general intelligence, and finally ASI, artificial superintelligence. And as you can see, that little starburst on the top, how many of you here can guess what that is? Singularity. That is singularity. That is basically von Neumann's concept of singularity, which is when the computers exceed the humans in terms of intelligence. And it's a scary thought. It's also an exciting thought. There's been all kinds of suggestions on when that happens. I think Ray Kurzweil named it 2029 as a time. I personally think it's a little beyond that, but nonetheless, it's going to happen at some point. So what AI is not. This is not Skynet. It is not the end of machines coming and killing humans. We're not running under bunkers and trying to wage a war against the machines. I really don't believe it is, even though there's a lot of discussion and talk, and everybody thinks about, okay, Skynet's coming and going to kill us all, right? And the reason I don't believe that's the case at all is because even though people like Stephen Hawking, Elon Musk all have caution against rampage of AI, the reason is that this whole idea of survival is a very evolutionary programming thing. Machines haven't had that benefit. I mean, every animal, right from the insect to humans to everything we know that lives, is programmed on an evolutionary basis to survive, to procreate and to survive. And anything threatening their existence, there is a visceral reaction to kind of take out that factor. Machines don't have that, and if they have it, it's our fault, because they shouldn't have it, right? They also talked about a kill switch, which is how do you actually put a kill switch to turn something off, an on-off. So we'll have that. Google has already put a kill switch in some of its AI programs. The last thing is it's highly specific. I mean, we don't build robots or artificial intelligence for the fun of it. There is no reason to make a Mozart that is a robot. Why? Because why would you? I mean, there's creativity, we need humans to do that. AI and robots are going to do things like repetitive tasks, predictive, things that the big 3Ds, jobs that are dull, jobs that are dangerous, and jobs that are dirty. Those are definitely being particular when it goes to that. So I think what ends up happening is we actually don't have this risk in ways. And again, that's when I say, in my humble opinion, that's what it is. So I don't know how many of you are familiar here with the hype cycle that Gartner puts out. And the hype cycle is this notion of technology as it evolves. So if you look at all the components, it's hard to read this slide from a distance, I suppose, but what I'm pointing to is there is this rapid burgeoning of technology that happens initially. And all of these AI technologies you see today that exists in the hype cycle. But here's the problem. There is a huge, in that phase when things get really exciting, as is AI right now, the expectations of what is realistic and what it's going to have in terms of yield, of value, is really ahead. And then you have this, what is called a trough of disillusionment, which is when you realize that the expectations far outrun what is feasible or what is realistic, you have that trough. And it takes a while, it takes a few years before that trough comes out, and then there's a balancing of expectations and what is feasible, and then you come into it. So that's where AI is. But AI is here, it is going to be here, and it's going to change our lives in a ways that we can't even fathom right now. But here's what I like about it. The same hype cycle for MarTech and marketing technology, we are past the trough of disillusionment in most cases. So so as you can see, we're either in that process or beyond it. So the first use cases for true AI or the entire space of AI a very, very good use case and a very important one is going to be in marketing. And why? Is because of this. I kind of look at is what's going to happen in MarTech, and many of you here are marketing. There is going to be 3 or 4 key trends that are happening. The first is what I like to call, I just made this up by the way, so it's called atomic personalization. It is that every single human is going to be mapped and known. We will actually know them, the machines and the technology and the marketing stack will know each of you in some respects better than yourselves. What you like, what makes you tick, how you consume stuff, how do you interact with you, what is a purchase pattern, and so on. If you think about it, we are 7 billion people on the planet. We'll probably get to 9 or 10 before it starts dropping, and drop precipitously, by the way. But we'll probably peak out at 10 or 11 billion people. It's 11 billion records. That's not a big deal from a technology standpoint. So, and every single one, we will actually beat that holy grail of knowing every one of you literally by the DNA, almost down to what makes you tick. That makes it hyper predictive. Being able to predict what you do, how you consume, what makes you tick, what your interests are, and oftentimes predict in ways that is almost creepy. Because the systems and machines will know what is going to make you work. And that enables us to then drive experiences for our customers. Whether it is through augmented reality, whether it is through messaging, through MarTech, through campaigns, all of that stuff. So it's really important, but those are tailored just for you. Systems will know. Right now, the problem we have, and I'll talk about this in more detail in a couple of slides down, is you've got this quandary where if you get too personalized, your population starts shrinking. And we don't have the budgets to get personalized down to the individual. If you make it too broad, it's kind of a message that's too vague and no one connects. And you're spending too much money and don't get the results you want. So these are going to be the key areas in the MarTech space. Particularly for SaaS companies, almost all technology, with the exception of some the vast majority is going to go towards the default dominant situation is going to be SaaS, cloud, and what is commonly called as big data, which is not a term I'm particularly fan of, but because as opposed to what, small data? No. So, but big data is basically it's all about deep knowledge, intelligence, and being able to compute data at levels we could not earlier, just because the computational power enables us to do so. Nobody's building on-premise software anymore. The problem there is that 90% of your business comes from your customers. That's what I do. Every day I wake up, the first question is, how many of our customers are in red, to use a temperature? And my only job, the one job that will guarantee that I'll get fired if I don't do, is ensuring that we keep reducing the number of accounts in red. Right? So, and not just red. And that is just a highly defensive position. How do you get from green to shiny green to neon green? Right? And that's very, very important. It never is 100%, but that's what we strive for. And serving the customer base is really of key value. So here's some use cases on how customer marketing. One is adoption. The assumption customers need to get onboarded, it's implementation, and they need to actually adopt the product. You've got tracking customer health in a predictive way is really, really key as well. Customer engagement, how you and your team and everyone of the customer engages with them. Advocacy, messaging, profile. Even though Marketo came from the email world, we are now omni-channel, multi-channel. I love the previous panel when they said omni-channel, because it really is. Your customers live in multiple different channels, whether it is email, social, web, apps, media, print, the whole, it really lives across the board, and it's proliferating. So as a result, what ends up happening is, those are the use cases that are really key. So this is more of a Marketo point of view, but I thought I'd share this with you because I like to think that we are kind of cutting, we're leading the business in that regard. So the first and foremost is marketing is a grueling job in many respects. There's a whole list of things that are relative, each of which is probably not significant, but all stitched together to become a very significant effort. So they are held out this daunting assembly line of tasks. What we want is an autonomous platform that is able to execute campaigns, able to track the customers, measure them, serve up content or messaging for the customers in a way that is automatic. It should not have to be that every single thing is on. You don't have to have as a marketing guy or girl, and guy is a gender neutral term here, you shouldn't need to have your, I see a chuckle there, okay? So you shouldn't have to have your hands on the controls at all times. And then so it's a marketing machine combination. And then finally, it's less about what you do, it's more about the impact on the customers. So the experiences and the interaction and the engagement of the customer, that's all it is. We have the term we think we coined, and now it's of course not necessarily the engagement economy, because it is no longer about email. No, a lot of people don't read email. You know, as my daughter says, who's a teenager, email's for old people. Right? Okay. So, except when she goes to work and she realizes all of her stuff happens in email. So, when she's still a teenager, right? Because work is still email dominant, but not necessarily social. She uses all these platforms. I have no idea what those do, and why. It's all bizarre. But the point is, and I should know this because I live in this market. The point is happening every single day. That the way the customers and people are interacting is just phenomenal. But getting that experience to them in the right place, right time, right channel is super important. So specifically, we have to basically, we have a couple of different modules, 3 or 4 different initiatives at Marketo that are really redefining. Some of these are, by the way, a safe harbor. All these are just as a purely from a announcement standpoint. Some of these are available today. Some are in the pipeline, and some are being developed. But there's varying stages. The first is what we call the perfect customer. Is to be able to define the perfect audience for a given campaign, whether it is social campaign or email campaign or what have you. And by that, it means you may have 500,000 records or 1 million records in your Salesforce. The idea of trying to hyper-personalize is really important because on the one hand, you want to have, if you start hyper-personalizing, your audience can become really small. And running individualized campaigns takes a lot of resources in terms of people, and the content has to be highly specific to each of the micro audiences. So on the back of this is defining what is known as audience AI, is to really be able to dynamically identify a campaign based on the audience, what each audience does, what makes them tick, the firmographics, the demographics. The AI knows that the engine automatically learns what is exactly required by the customer to make it happen. And the last one, which is available today, and which I personally is my favorite, is called Content AI. And it basically identifies what content for what audience at what stage of the engagement is relevant. The problem is being able to deliver the right content, right time. That is the key thing. So what we found is our customers who have actually deployed this have been really excited about the fact that now they can take their hands off the wheel in terms of content development, content deployment. You may have seen this chart. Obviously, it's not intended to be read because it cannot, right? The notion here is it's basically the MarTech 5,000. It's actually more like 6,000. There are 6,000 technologies or solutions or applications in the market in marketing technology. It is mind-numbing. There is obviously going to be some consolidation. There will be. But also what it means is, the average marketer now is using anywhere from 50 to 150 different solutions across their entire stack. Now, we are fortunate in that Marketo tends to be the brain in many respects of what happens in the marketing system, but it's really key to do this. So our view on this is, the first and foremost is know your customer. Your customer, and as you all think about this is what I kind of almost as a call to action. Several of you here are entrepreneurs, I'm assuming, and many of them are also in the marketing space. The first is really identify and know your customer, and understand that your customer lives in, it's omni-channel. It's no longer just email, no longer just LinkedIn or Facebook. There are literally dozens of applications and venues they live in. And being able, and as you think of AI, start to kind of map a mechanism where you're able to track and profile your customer. And by the way, profiling is a good word in marketing. So be able to track and profile your customers across all these channels and be able to measure them and understand who the customer is. Ultimately, the end goal is to get to the down to the individual. And no two individuals on this planet are alike. So the second is high resolution engagement. That is high resolution. Right now, we are very low res. All of you here in marketing understand it's you're torn between low res and high res, because if you go high res, you get a very small view of the audience segment, and it costs a lot of money to do that. When you go low res, you get a bigger audience, but then a bigger base, but then you simply start targeting that, and being a meaningful interaction with that low res audience is very difficult. So that results in this. Now, once we have AI to enable both of those to happen, you're able to actually have high impact, individualized interactions with every one of your audience members. And that lets you deliver scale and value and this thing. And so basically at scale, hyper-personalized messaging and interactions. Once you control that, you can drive that profit function. Because ultimately that's what it's all about, isn't it? Personal fulfillment as measured in US dollars. So, I wanted to kind of, that's really what I wanted to kind of share with you. By the way, that little Dilbert thing is the reason I don't fear my job ever being taken away. That's why I feel safe. But again, would welcome every one of you to, I'd love to connect. Obviously, it's impossible to do that on individually right now, but please feel free to reach out. And again, I realize it's late. I thank you for being patient and participating here. I'm happy to take questions, by the way, but I'm not sure. It's a keynote, so Vamshi. Yeah? All right. Well, I'm open to do that, but I mean, if any questions, otherwise, let me not keep you from your drinks and beverages. Thank you.
Question.
Yeah, hi.
So I'm Jennifer Barr. I do digital marketing. I've used Marketo for years for email campaigns. I really like it. Do you see yourself, how do you see yourself interacting with maybe some of the social tools or other platforms as you integrate? I like your vision. Are you going to be competing with them, partnering with them?
Yeah, no, our vision on and our direction we're going for Marketo for social is that is one of the many channels where our customers live. And our goal is to understand you. You said Jennifer?
Yes.
So understand what makes you tick, right? Where you buy, what you do, and the number of digital signals being put out there is incredible.
I know.
Right? No one's able to tap into those. Our job and any kind of tools we develop is how do you tap into and identify digital signals and build a map on you. That lets me then decide how you need to personalize a message for you. And that's what our customers want to do.
You probably know this, but I'm in job search mode, and while I'm a social specialist, more and more now, they want me to also know email because they realize there's too many digital signals and socials for that to be the only one. So that's why I was particularly interested. Thank you.
Great. No, thank you.
Hi, Cindy Lawley.
Hi, Cindy.
I had a question about small startup mode, 500 target B2B customers. At what point can you collect enough data to leverage AI in your campaigns and in your marketing?
So I'm sorry, how big are you?
Targeting 500 customers in the next 2 years, $1 to $10 million companies.
Okay.
And they're, so it's maybe 15 people in a company at the moment. So that's CRM is pretty small.
Right. So that's a great question. And so this comes down to this whole, and I don't have this chart here, but one of my favorite charts is what defines B2B and B2C. And even, so B2B is traditionally defined as anywhere from up to, from let's say 1,000 customers to 10,000, or maybe a little bit more, 50,000, 100,000, that range. Once you start getting much beyond that into the millions, you go to the B2C space. So for example, if I'm selling to pizza shops or to florists and stuff like that, that becomes B2C. Yep. So the circle gets bigger. But what you are is in the core. I'm not sure what you guys do, obviously.
It's like a commercialization platform. So it's for businesses to commercialize in a
Okay. So if you've got an audience of 500 customers, I mean, I hate to say this, but you know your 500 customers.
Exactly.
You should. I mean, it's like if I'm Airbus Industrial or Boeing selling to airlines, I don't need a CRM. There is 100 airlines in the world, and if I don't know everything about everyone out there, I'm out of business.
Okay.
That's so. I mean, if you are in that realm, you have a different challenge. It's just how do you get deep, not wide, across your customer base? Because you really now have to know there's multiple stakeholders. Those 500 contain an enormous amount of buying power. So you really have to understand the matrix, the organization, the operations, who decides what, who has got the budget, all those sorts of things. Yeah. But it's not about scale. It's about depth.
Yeah, great. Yeah. Thanks.
Sure.
Hi, my name is Vishal.
Hi, Vishal.
I'm from AI Machines. My question is, you spoke about micro-personalization. That's a very interesting topic. Is Marketo working in the direction of analyzing customer conversations through the touch points by means of natural language understanding to really understand at a very cognitive level what the customer is thinking or how the customer is engaging or how the touch point's going?
So there is an effort underway. So I don't know, I guess you all heard the question. There is an effort underway to drive this notion of a social AI. Basically, the simple reason is, again, this whole idea that there's buying signals and triggers in the marketplace put out by the customer. Whether it is a like, or whether it's a comment, or whether it is a share, or a retweet, or commentary, or email exchange, or NLP, any of those things. In all fairness, that's whether it's, and by the way, this is not a Marketo-centric discussion. This is across everybody. I'm aware of at least 2 startups that are working very, very aggressively in trying to identify these and actually build a profile. Is to have this digital version of you based on the stuff you put out there. The only way we would not have that is if you are off the grid completely, in which case we wouldn't have the signals to pick up. So there is, but if that's the direction you're going, it's a hot space.
Sure. What are those 2 startups? Just check.
Offline. Okay. Thank you, guys. Thanks so much. Appreciate it.